Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 192. As always, I'm your host, James Shotwell, and I hope this finds you well. How are you doing? Are you healthy? Are you hydrated? Are you staying away from one another? Are you staying indoors? It's been a little bit of a wild time as of late, as I'm sure you've no doubt noticed, and I think we're adjusting. I think that we're getting along pretty okay. My partner and I went out to the store this morning at about 6 a.m. to grab some last-minute groceries, and our plan moving forward is just to stay inside. And I hope that is the same for you, because the faster we all just hunker down and stay home, the faster we can all get back to life as we know it, or as we knew it as it stands right now. I don't know about you, but I really miss going to concerts. I miss going to movies. I miss getting out of the house. But if it takes 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks to ensure that no one else gets sick on a massive scale and then life can resume, then so be it. Let's stay home for the entire month of April. Are you with me? You can't really respond. I don't know why I'm waiting. Anyways, on this week's episode of Inside Music, I have my friend David from the band Charmer on to talk about his group's new album, Ivy, which will be in stores this April through No Sleep Records. Now, I have a very cool relationship with this band. I was able to write the bio for their new album. I've been able to talk to David on several occasions now, and I find him to be a very fascinating person. He hails from the Upper Peninsula part of Michigan, which for people not from the area is the little extra bit of Michigan that dangles just above the part that you call the mitten. David and I talk a little bit about that. We also talk about his work on this record, writing songs, and what the band is doing to stay sane during the coronavirus outbreak. I know it's a very scary time right now, so we don't try to focus too much on the negative, but instead focus on what we can do, the things we can control, and the joy that we can bring other people. And I hope that this conversation does a little bit of that for you. But before we get there, I have a few quick announcements. First and foremost, this episode of Inside Music, and all episodes of the show, is brought to you by Holics, the music industry's leading promotional distribution platform. Now, Holics is used by artists like Slipknot, Blink-182, Tool, Killswitch Engage, Charmer, Best X, and many of the guests that you've heard here on Inside Music. You can join Holics today and receive your first month of service absolutely free. Just visit holics.com. That's HAULIX.com. I also want to encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. It's called Music Biz. That's Music B-I-Z. And there you can stream every episode of the show, as well as a ton of content related to succeeding and understanding the music business, all hosted by yours truly. So if you've ever wanted to see my face, you ever wanted to, put an image to the voice that you hear on the show, head over to YouTube and search Music Biz. One more time, it's Music B-I-Z. If you subscribed, I'd be indebted to you. And lastly, make sure that you check out this Charmer record. They play a very specific version of Midwest emo that I think is really just a beautiful thing. And their new album does a great job of welcoming new fans while also kind of tying up loose ends from their previous records, which is something you'll hear David talk about in just a few moments. But right now, we got to play the music. So just sit back, relax, stay safe, wash your hands, drink lots of water, and enjoy this conversation with David from Charmer. You just mentioned, let's start with where you are right now. So you're not at home right now.
I'm not at home right now, no.
But you are in the UP, right, where you live?
Yeah, so there's no one up here, so it's okay. So I went from my house into my car, and then I drove like 10 minutes to Nick in our band has a screen printing business, and he has a little nice office, I don't know, down by the lake. And I'm just down here right now packing up some eBay orders, and I'm by myself, so I'm not infecting anyone if I was infected.
Well, that's good. Well, I hope it's not good that you don't know that you're infected or not, but it's good that you're not infecting anyone right now by your actions.
I mean, it's here. There's a lot of people infected where I live, and we live in a town of like 20,000 people, so it's got to be.
Yeah, there's a growing number here in Grand Rapids. We're trying, like on the news, they like have the count of how many people it is. But something I found online is they also they put a list of locations where everyone who is infected have been recently. That's way more terrifying.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, they obviously don't show what the actual number is. Um, there's no way that they actually show what the actual number is
No,
because
I was
we
actually.
have we
Go
have
ahead.
I know several people that work in the hospital where we live, and they have several patients that they're holding right now and have been for days, but there's been no news announcement of that anywhere publicly to the town, you know. So the only way you'd know that if you knew someone that worked within the, you know, medical system.
I know. I feel like if you pay attention online, you can find messages from people who know more than maybe they should be sharing, which is
No,
total conspiracy
and
theory
it's
stuff.
everywhere. So everyone thinks it's a conspiracy theory, but it's actually it's going on.
I know exactly. Like this morning, they set up a new testing facility here in Grand Rapids at the downtown hospital, and the journalist covering it said they've seen about 200 people today, and of those 200, about a third tested as being positive for potentially having COVID. And I was just like, that's 67 people. That's more than the entire state is reporting right now, and
Oh
you're just
yeah,
like throwing it
exactly.
out there in a tweet.
No, exactly. So that's why it's just an interesting time for everyone, really.
Especially as somebody who is in the midst of about to release music, and you're out there talking about something that has nothing to do with what everyone's thinking about right now, and you have to be like, oh, by the way, I'm artistic. Yeah, I'm doing things.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty interesting, but maybe it'll benefit. Maybe people will be bored and waiting for something. I don't know. I think it's gonna go exactly like the release itself is gonna go exactly as planned. Um, we're gonna have to probably cancel a bunch of shows, which is unfortunate, but I guess it just delays. I mean, it's everyone doing it, so I'm not butthurt about it. It's just another thing to deal with.
Absolutely. And I feel like, it's something I was wondering today, and I don't, right off the bat, I don't encourage anyone to do this. However, I do not doubt that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, someone on Twitter will ruin a party for somebody by posting basement show footage that's happening somewhere. Like it's just inevitable that some DIY kids will make themselves sick to throw a house show somewhere after within the next month. It's going to happen. And I just wonder if we'll actually hear about it happening.
Oh, they're gonna get shamed on the internet. Is what's gonna happen. People are sensitive. They're gonna get really mad. But you know, if they want to do it,
I think the webcasting stuff is cool. I know that those guys at Hate 56 are doing a live stream of a Year of the Knife show at some venue somewhere tonight. And last night we watched the Dropkick Murphys one, and then we watched Anthony Green perform acoustic on Twitch. And I was like, I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's something. I was still kind of got a little bit of that, that goodness that comes from experiencing live music, being there in the moment, even though it was like the Dropkick Murphys one had like 250,000 people watching, which is
oh,
insane.
that's phenomenal.
Like that's a dream. Anthony had like 4,000, still incredible, but
No,
I
that's
was like,
cool. I mean, at least it's you have to think about like you wouldn't have an opportunity. Like artists wouldn't be doing this otherwise. So it is kind of cool, you know. And I think it will be like looked back on as I don't know. Maybe it'll change how artists function in the future. Just from this, you know, 2 month quarantine or 3 month quarantine or 6 month quarantine or whatever it turns into. But I don't know.
yeah, don't put a timeline on it. You're just going to be wrong. It's fine.
Oh, I'm already wrong.
Oh yeah, all the way. No one actually knows. It's something I'm actually in a group chat with several other big. Well, I'm not that I include myself among those, but several big music journalists, knowledgeable industry people in our group chat is. Just the darkest timeline of a group chat. It's just constantly sharing insider information about what's happening in music, and every single update is like, come on.
None of it's good.
Nope, none of
Yeah,
it's good.
none of
But
it's
I
good.
but it is funny because I actually today I saw a tweet someone sent that I didn't know. Someone was retweeting a tweet that was promoting your album coming up and still being excited for it. So I do think that people are, excited to hear your album in particular, but just in general, I think like right now people want more content, and music is probably going to be the biggest way that people get stuff for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about how people have, reacted to what you've already shared? I know that you and I have talked previously about this stuff, but people weren't privy to that conversation. So doing it all over again, how people have reacted to the songs that are already out there in the world. Is it going as well as you hoped? I know there's some changes to what's going on sonically with the
Yeah,
band.
I mean, any time that people are taking the time to listen to your art, that's good. For a couple of years, I would get very insecure about what other artists were doing and what other bands were doing, and when they're releasing this, you just kind of feel like, oh, you're doing nothing. But anytime someone's taking the time out of their day to listen to your music, it's great. And so far, this is our first time we put a release out where we actually have an established, fan base, if you want to call it that. And people know it because last time we put out an album, no one knew anything that we were doing. So I would say it's great. And I'm very pleased how everything's going, and I'm very proud of the record, and I think that most people will really enjoy it that have listened to us before when it comes out, and more importantly, I think it's gonna bridge the gap and get us, a lot more attention from people that in the past didn't really give us a chance. But so far, so great.
That's good to hear, man. And I feel like you have the added benefit of riding this wave of Michigan releases that are coming out right now. Yeah, Hot Mulligan did so well. The Dogleg record being best new music, pretty big deal for Pitchfork. And now we're rolling up on the Charmer record.
Yeah, and there's other, Gray Matter just put out a record, and I don't know them very well, but they're from downstate, and they've been nothing but nice to us, and they just put out a record, and it's very good. Um, my buddy Chandler just put out a record in Nest Lake, and I know he's got another thing planned. So there's a lot going on in Michigan. There's always a lot going on in Michigan, and even a lot of times living in the UP, you don't hear what's going on, but there's a lot of cool bands up here putting out stuff that kind of goes under the radar just because the volume of people is not here. To really hype it up on the internet more than anything, because that's kind of how it works nowadays. But lots of good music out of Michigan always. Very proud to be located in Michigan, even though we're not really. I don't know. We're so detached from everything that's going on. It seems like, but it's still great to be part of Michigan music.
Yeah, and for people that don't understand how far away you are, like I live in Grand Rapids, which is, let's say, conservatively about an hour and a half to 2 hours from the border to Indiana, and you are like 8 hours from me. More
Correct. North, yes. It doesn't make much sense, but
yeah, in this the quickest timeline, I could get there in like 7.5 hours without traffic if the bridge is open.
Yeah, and it's so funny when we're talked about within other Michigan, bands, because I think people just assume we're from downstate or in the Detroit area or something, because we always get clumped in with these bands, and it's really nice, but like we don't know half of them. We don't like never met them. I don't know what they sound like. I don't, so it's pretty interesting in that sense. But I wish I definitely wish the UP and the music up here got more attention. Like people downstate did. They have the opportunity and exposure down there.
Yeah, I just think no one's ever heard like a big artist that came out of the UP, unless I'm mistaken. You can totally correct me, but I've only ever known, like when I was in college, I had a bunch of friends in bands that were from the UP, and I remember going home to going up with them to their home to like see them perform, and I was like, it's its own scene altogether.
No, absolutely. I mean, and then there's everything here. If you're like in the college crowd, which when we first started in 2015, we played every month in town, and that's something we would never consider doing now. But whether it be a house show or playing at a brewery, or we would just load up the shows and play as much as we could that first year. Um, and it still continues, and you see a lot of bands, and people don't just go out for genres; they go out just to see live music. They're just craving it. There's a nice university here with a decent size, number of students, and everyone is just genuinely excited when an out of town act comes, or local music, any house show. Um, it's really cool to see because you kind of see everything in that sense, and you're exposed to so many different kind of genres of music that maybe you wouldn't give a try or take the time to listen to prior. And that's why I always encourage like touring bands to come through, because a lot of times they'll come through and they'll say, that was like one of the best shows of the tour, just because it was like loaded with 80 to 100 kids that were just dying for live music. And it's not about the genre, they're just happy that it's present in front of them.
Yeah, I remember when I lived in Boston for a while. There's this trend of like there's this thing in there called Boston comedians. So like Boston has this giant comedy scene that's recognized all over the world, but there's this core group of like full-time professional comedians who never really leave New England because there's enough opportunity that on some level they can kind of do what they love and they don't have to worry about going everywhere. Where even if you're downstate, if you live in like Grand Rapids, you probably can't get away with just being in Grand Rapids. You have to go to Lansing or Detroit or somewhere even further away. And I feel like the UP has its own little version of that, whereas like there are people in the UP who build a fairly good career for themselves with just playing all the towns and pit stops along the way up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of places to play, if I'm being completely honest. Marquette is good. Houghton, um, we haven't been up there in a while, but it used to be really good. There was a house and a group of people that were really dedicated, and I know a lot of them left because they were college kids. But that was a great place to play too. Um, and then you'll have the smaller towns. I mean, they're all small towns, given like the biggest town is 20,000 people. But you have bands from the smaller towns, forming and coming up, and it's all really cool to see, honestly. Um, I think a lot of people are inspired by other bands that were, um, doing the thing, and it's kind of cool because it's chain reaction.
Absolutely. I think the last time I was in the UP, I was in college and I had to do a report on the Keweenaw Brewing Company. So then we made a last minute
KBC,
road trip up there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
awesome.
The Pickaxe Blonde Ale back in my drinking days. Love that. That was fun.
Yeah, my sister, maybe she still works there. I don't know. She's going to get her doctorate up at Michigan Tech, and she's been working. I think she's worked at KBC for like 3 years now, 3, 4 years.
Oh, now we're getting real inside baseball from Michigan. Only residents of a certain part of Michigan. This is content just for you guys.
Yeah.
Tell me, man. So I guess I should ask you some like solid questions about the record. It's funny because you and I have talked about the record so much already that it's like it feels a little bit like having the same conversation again, and it's fine. People don't know that.
Yeah,
Because I
people
helped.
don't know that.
Yeah, so I wrote the bio for this new record, which means I heard it like in I don't know January I think it was, and then you and I talked about it for a while, and then I talked about it with your publicist, and I talked about it with Chris from No Sleep, and I was like, so when they were like, hey, can Dave do the podcast? I was like, he can, but do you realize that we have to have a similar conversation? Like we have to basically do it all over again, like we
Yeah,
both
well,
have amnesia.
I had actually, okay, so I remember talking to you on the phone for a while, but you know, I don't
Yeah, well,
remember
it's
that
fine.
much specifics. I'll probably
Well,
say some
yeah,
similar stuff. Maybe I'll contradict
well,
myself. I have no idea.
well, it's one of those things where, I used to do a lot of video content for a blog I ran, and I never remember any of the video stuff we did. But the guy who had to edit my videos,
Oh, he
he
knows it
was like,
all.
he knows it all, and he was like, he's one of my best friends, and he on multiple occasions he would be like, I literally don't want to see your face. He's like, it's not that I don't love you, but I've been looking at it for 12 hours today before you even want to come over, and I'm just over you. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, man, it's cool. So in that instance, I record the conversation with you, and then I listen to it several times over to work on writing a bio for you guys, which is really fun. And then they're like, do you want to talk about it some more? And I'm like, what else is there for us to talk about? But let's talk about it anyways. So the new record is cool for a lot of reasons. I really enjoy it. But something that I brought up to you when I first heard it is that to me, it's almost like your guys is a version of an Avengers Infinity War Endgame where everything that anyone knows about Charmer is wrapped up here, as well as kind of planting seeds for what's to come next. Do you still feel that way?
Oh, absolutely. And that's what it was. That was the mindset when writing it. I was having horrible writer's block the whole time writing it. Because there was a part of me that really wanted to move on and do the next thing. Um, and I think that this really bridged the gap for us to now be able to do the next thing musically. Um, I love emo music, and that's what got me into it and inspired me to start the band, in like 2015. And I was listening to a lot of it then. Um, but that's 5 years ago now, and I'm older, and things change, and you kind of grow out of a lot of that. And I kind of find myself not listening to much of any emo music nowadays. Um, so I really had a hard time writing another emo record. But I think this definitely bridged the gap, and I'm really glad that we went with the lyrical thematics of concluding of what we discussed prior in our discography, and it leaves us with a nice template to branch off of when we do the next thing.
In terms of wrapping up, kind of arcing themes or storylines and stuff, what was, I guess, maybe the most kind of challenging ideas to kind of bring? Was there anything that was like maybe added difficulty in terms of kind of trying to wrap up some thoughts or just close the book on some things? I mean, I imagine that maybe the hardest part is starting new things versus saying, okay, the book's closed and now here's this new thing that it's kind of different. Like, that's a challenge in itself. But in terms of wrapping stuff up, was there any one song or kind of idea that was a little bit harder to tackle this time, knowing that you were purposely trying to wrap it up?
I don't think so. I think it came pretty easy, because a lot of it really does weave in and out with one another and complements one another. Um, so what ended up happening is we, had all these instrumentals written, and then we kind of went through and picked out the ones we really enjoyed the most. And then for about 3 months before we went and recorded in November, every day I would just sit down, in my little home recording space, and I would just demo stuff out and demo stuff out and try different, lines here and there. And sometimes, a lot of the songs on the album, I would try a set of lyrics in one of the songs in another song before I even tried it in that song, So it's kind of like placing, pieces of the puzzle to the instrumentals, because, like I said, I was having such bad writer's block lyrically, because I just didn't relate to a lot of the content, um, because I kind of just grew out of it. But also, I knew I couldn't. I don't know. It was very difficult to think of new thematics to bridge off of, because there was a whole nother pile of instrumentals, that we kind of just kept on throwing to the side that really didn't fit our genre, or the style we had, or be too intimidating to like listeners or people that wanted another Charmer record. It just wouldn't sound like us, and we didn't really want to do that quite yet, because everyone in the band really does come from drastically different musical backgrounds, but it was a fun challenge overall.
Absolutely. And are you somebody that keeps writing? Like, right now, if you look at, any industry blog or advice column or podcast, like the one you're listening to right now, people will say things about, now is we're going to get so much creativity out of this particular time in the world because everyone is forced into a similar situation. And so the, universal themes and relatability are going to be ever more present. But are you, like, you guys, you haven't even put out this record yet. Are you already working on new stuff, or do you just kind of put it to bed until it's time to make something new?
I personally am always working on a little bit of stuff, not like every day, and not sitting around time. It's like I get a melody in my head, or I'm at home and I'm just noodling on the guitar, and then I run across like a progression I like, and then start building off of it. Personally, I have a bunch of ideas that I'd like to present to the other members of the band, and I'm sure we'll start doing that now that we have some more free time. And then I personally am always recording like lo-fi stuff, like pop music, just myself. So maybe one day I'll release a collection of those, because I have at least 20 tracks like that are kind of just sitting on a hard drive. I don't know. So always writing. It's a good creative outlet. Um, but we'll see what we do as far as the new Charmer stuff. I think it'd be fun to do an EP. I think it'd be fun to revisit some old stuff that we don't like the recordings of. Um, there's like a lot of things we could pursue in this downtime. Um, it's just a matter of, I guess, what we choose. But yeah, always writing, and I know everyone else in the band is always writing. Neil, the lead guitarist, and he also sings a little bit. He comes up with phenomenal guitar parts that you know you never know when I'm gonna get a voice memo on my phone, and he's like, check this out, and it's like my favorite thing ever. And then Nick, our drummer, is always playing different bands, so a lot of elements come in, and it kind of just happens. I don't know.
No, I think that that's great, and it sounds like you have your own collection of lo-fi beats to study and work out to, ready to share with the world.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that quite yet. I'm not like a solo guy, and I don't have the personality to be a solo guy, so um, I don't know what I'll do with that. It's more for myself than others, I think, at this point, but we'll see what happens with that.
I don't know, man. I do a lot of data studies for work, and the lo-fi beat stuff and lo-fi pop music stuff on Spotify from even anonymous artists that nobody knows anything about tend to have like major streaming numbers because people put those playlists on repeat nonstop. I mean, it could be your new like thing no one knows you do.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of mine has like lyrics and stuff like that too. So I don't know if that mixes with those playlists you're talking about, but um, maybe after I'll send you a link after the
Okay.
podcast.
I would love. No, I'm 100% into it. I would love to hear it. I mean, it could be your new thing. Imagine if like, Charmer was your public facing thing, but like your side hustle was just you make lo-fi beats to study and work to. Just that's like
Yeah,
your secret
maybe,
thing.
maybe.
You have some unpronounceable name that's more consonants, more vowels than consonants. It's just,
Yeah, come up with something good. Yeah.
or you just rearrange Charmer into something else and make it the whole thing. I love it. Let me ask you this because it's something that we talked about at the very beginning of this, and I should have brought it up then. And we're kind of getting to the end of our time together now. Do you think in this wave of webcasting, live streaming, all that, have you guys talked at all about doing some kind of Charmer cast broadcast for the world, performing some of these songs stripped down or something?
Um, I strong chances are no. And we're just it's I think it's just really our personalities as people. Um, I don't think we're gonna do anything like that. I mean, it's a good idea and all, but I don't know. I don't think I would get any gratification from that personally. Um, yeah, I mean, it's been
It's good.
proposed already because a lot of bands are doing it, but I don't think I feel very comfortable or us as a group really is interested in doing that. Um, but we'll see.
As a viewer,
I don't want to
it's
say
been
no, you know.
Yeah, well, it's been fun watching the people who've done it so far, whether it's Code Orange or Dropkick or some of the smaller artists, because virtually no one knows how to do it well. That is generally a touring musician. So, like the Code Orange one, there was a moment where he was like, let's get crazy, or like get up here on stage. And the Dropkick one, there was a moment last night during shipping up to Boston where Al Barr got to the front of the stage and was like, kind of signaling for everyone to clap along. And I was like, does he want us to clap in our houses? Like, what are we doing right now? You know what I mean? Like people just don't know what to do with their hands and like their audience interaction. One of the new Dropkick songs last night, we were laughing because King Casey was literally just pacing from one end of the stage to the other while singing the song. And I was like, he just doesn't know what to do with himself.
No, exactly. And I think it'd be weird. And it'd be one thing if we had, a team behind us that was miking everything properly and we had, high production going on as far as like audio quality and stuff. But, if we just put an iPhone in in our practice space and just film us playing, it's gonna sound bad. That's what it's gonna sound like. So it's a cool idea. I mean, maybe if we had better resources.
Yeah, I mean it's cool enough. My favorite thing I saw this far is the Dropkick guys did a shirt that was like on the front it had the logo for the show that was the same as the poster, but on the back it was like a tour shirt and the only date was March 17th and then the location was my living room, which I was like that's genius. Like really cashing in on that.
Yeah.
So the album comes out not this Friday. Does it come out next Friday for the 27th or is it this Friday?
Oh, it's the third.
The third. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're getting there. It's coming out.
No, you confuse me too. I constantly have this problem where I actually do forget when it is coming out. And
well, it's the age we live in now, right?
You made me think it was Friday for a second. I was like, oh no, it's Friday already. So yeah,
like, I think I have to do more
Friday
interviews.
It'll come out. Yeah.
And you seem to be feeling good about it.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I'm
no
nerves. Ready for it to be out. Oh, so many nerves. So many security issues. I think once it's out, I'll be much more at ease about it. Like I said, I have a tendency to compare to other things going on, and it's just not, it's not very healthy actually. And I've done very well to get past that and stuff. But it's just, normal competitiveness, and in music there shouldn't be any competitiveness. So once it's out and it's in the open, I'll be much more at ease of the album. I think it's going to be great, to be honest.
Well, I'm excited to watch people hear it. I mean, it's my favorite thing this month with Hot Mulligan and then Dogleg bands that I've been either working with or just kind of involved with the rollout for a while now. It's cool to finally see people hear the record and see what people gravitate towards. And I'm sure it's doubly exciting, triply exciting for you to see that, because you're just like, oh, my baby's out there and people don't hate it. That's great.
Yeah,
it's
truly.
So good.
And both phenomenal records also, I'll say. So, to be the last one of that trio of Michigan bands releasing an album, hopefully hits par. But I'm like I said, I'm very confident. I think a little bit of something for everyone on the album.
Yeah, no, I think you guys will be great, and I think people will embrace it similarly. The three albums could not be more different, but that's what's so exciting about it, is that there's this weird thing that happens in this state where everyone becomes a storyteller, but no one tells the same story the same way, or same story than the same sound. Like everyone's so different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's a whole other conversation. Anyways, the record is out the beginning of April. Everyone will probably almost definitely be locked inside their houses, so no one has an excuse not to stream it. And if you're listening to this now before it comes out, because we'll probably get this out before then, go stream the singles that are out already and put them on. Just turn the volume on Spotify down and let it roll. Let it just roll, baby. Do all those streams. It's fine. We have at Holics, we have a quarantine playlist. If you go on Spotify, you can look it up. It's all Holics clients. Charmer is on there, along with Dogleg and Hot Mulligan and a ton of other great bands that have albums out right now. So check that out. And anything else, David?
No, I was my only thing I had a question for you is how's that Twitter suspension going?
Oh, my Twitter suspension. I think it's permanent. I think it's
really.
I think I am. Yeah,
that's unbelievable to me. Like, I don't know why.
I don't know why either. The tweet, for people that don't know the story, my main Twitter, James D. Shotwell, got flagged for copyright for a news story about President Trump getting flagged for copyright over a video he posted on his Twitter. So I got copyrighted for reporting about copywriting, and it's weird because Twitter has this rule where if you want to get unsuspended, sometimes it's days, sometimes if you want to get unsuspended, it requires the person that issued the takedown request to retract it. But they email thousands of people at once. They just kind of like comb through. And I sent multiple emails, and I sent emails to Twitter, and nobody's gotten back to me, and that it will be 2 weeks or 3 weeks this Saturday since it happened. And so I lost almost 5,000 Twitter followers, and now I have 114. And it's, on the good side though, that this happened just before all this COVID stuff, I am a little less on there are days where I forget that I don't have my old Twitter followers. And so I'm sitting there like refreshing the app being like, where are all the tweets? And I realized, I only follow like 75 people.
It's so unbelievable that they just do that, though.
And you can't, and there's such a hard, impenetrable wall. Because like if you the first time I emailed Twitter support, they emailed me back in Spanish. And then I emailed them and I was like, hey, I had to run this through Google Translate. Could you email me in English in the future? And then they sent me the same email back, but in English. And I was like, this is not what I meant. Clearly, I read the first email. And then they were like, you need to get the retraction. And so I've been doing like the dance. And then at one point, and I really lost it for a bit. Like I needed to ego check myself because I was having a panic moment about it, irrationally so, in the car. And I was just like, my followers, my clout. And my girlfriend, who works for Live Nation, is in music all the time and doesn't have a Twitter and never has had a Twitter, was just like, the number of followers you have does not affect like how people see you. And I was like, doesn't it though? And when I heard that come out of my mouth, my whole body was like, you're right. I gotta take a break. It was like, okay. So now it's James Shotwell _ I have a very small, pitiful following, but
I really hope it works out.
I mean, I hope it does too. But at this point, I'm just like, the only thing that makes me mad is all the all the stuff in the past that has my old Twitter handle tied to it that I don't have the power to change, like
it goes to nothing.
Yeah, it goes to a suspended account. Or like if I apply for a job somewhere and they like Google me and it comes up with my suspended account, they'll be like, you're not a good social media manager, dude. Like you couldn't even manage your own social media account. So there's that. But I did, I've been still doing some bios. I knocked out the Hot Mulligan one. I did your guys's. I'm doing the Best X one right now. And I just wrote a story for Alt Press that came out yesterday. So I'm still getting work. So I guess my Twitter clout doesn't matter that much, but I'm sure that there will be some scenario where a label is like, do you want this guy to write your bio? And they'll be like, psh, look at that follower count. No. But I
think it'd be good. I think it'd be good. Most people I've talked to since talking to you originally, that I've shared your name with, you're very known. So
well, that's okay. Good. That's good. So my new plan is that I'm building. I'm using all of this downtime that we currently have to build a new like personal website, and then I'll probably just like text you and be like, I need a good quote from. I need you to write my bio now and like send me quotes about myself, so I have like experience quotes. Be like, he used to have a good Twitter. He's an okay writer. He's an okay,
good guy.
Yeah. He deserves more Twitter followers. It's been funny because I did also have to I have a lot of bands that follow me and like musicians and bands that are verified. So like of my 114 followers, I want to say like half of them are verified accounts. I don't want to be like, can't Twitter see this and be like, clearly something going on. Yeah, people know who this guy is.
We're not verified though, so we're not helping you out.
You'll get there. I mean,
I made an ode that I'd throw my phone in the toilet if we got verified like a year ago. So hopefully that does not happen.
You took the opposite approach of Hot Mulligan, and you're just like, we're not going to ask.
We're not going to ask. No.
All right, man. Well, I enjoy talking to you. Do send me some of this lo-fi stuff that you're working on, and everyone else, since you can't hear that, go listen to the Charmer tracks. They're real good, and read their bio because that's also decent. And we'll hopefully talk soon. I'm going to come up there when the World War Z situation ends, and maybe we can do a podcast at Pictured Rocks or some other location.
That's very scenic. Maybe we can do something like that. Might be a little windy, but I'm down.
I mean, I don't know if the cabin from Escanaba in the Moonlight is a real cabin, but if we could go there, I would also say, okay. Well, then I would, then I've changed. I'm pivoting. Everyone's home right now. Before we end this, everyone, if you're still listening, go Google Escanaba in the Moonlight and watch it. Just don't ask questions.
It's a bad movie, but you can watch it.
Dude, it's a movie. That's for sure.
It's a movie.
People came together and worked months to make that movie, make that happen. So go check that out.
Thank you, James. Stay safe through all this.
Absolutely, man. You have a good time.
See you.